守るために。
Hello everybody, Vigo'sShadow here, and today we have another Shadow Festival unit. This time it's for Elizabeth. Now this is the second unit that we got for Elizabeth. So we have Vampire Progenitor, and now she is getting a new, we're getting a new unit for her. So this is Elizabeth Scarlet Blood Queen. Now right off the bat it looks pretty cool, but it's a green attacking unit. Now, this is kind of funny because we have Delta on the banner for Shadow Festival, a green attacking unit, and also Zeta for a green attacking unit. So that could leave people torn between which Shadow Festival banner to pull from. Now, I already did some videos on these units, as well as Takane as well, because Takane is also a green attacking unit. So we have 4 green attacking units that are like either limited time, or all limited time, meaning they won't be on the regular character pool, of course. So we're going to actually take a dip right into this character right off the bat, but first I will do what I usually do. I'm going to go to the profile, and we're going to take a look at the max stats right away. So this is what it would look like max. We're going here from power to healing boost. Then from healing boost all the way to overheal. And then we take a look at the grouping, which is just vampire. So that is just one grouping. So if we're looking for those units that do a lot of groupings, then this is not going to be it. It's only going to be vampire. They also have a new area for the magic gear, so let me just show you that for people who go to the summon details, right? So this is what they advertise. This one's boost attack based on the number of humans and vampires. So this is a unit that's going to be using humans and vampires a lot, or whatever, within the skills. So, and then of course we have this bonus effect, inflicts magic blockage. I will get into that when we get to it. Actually, you know what? I'll discuss it a little bit here. So magic blockage, if you go to the status effects and, pinpoint it, is when somebody's inflicted with magic blockage, it's going to make it to where if that unit is healed, they take damage instead of being healed. So if the healer of their team heals them, they will take damage instead based on their attack. So that's what magic blockage does. I think it's pretty good for PvP, especially if they have strong healers. And then if you go to the gear, it's actually going to tell you to look in a different place. So this is the first time I've ever seen that. So you're going to go to character details and profile. I'll show you exactly how to get there. So we're going to go to profile. Then we're going to go to skill. Then we're going to go all the way at the bottom. We can see linked gear here, and this is the new place where they want you to see magic gear. I will just go ahead and go into that right away, but you can do it here under the character details before you even have the character pulled. Otherwise, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it right here. So you can actually go into it right here, and then you can check out the magic gear. So we're going to actually check out the magic gear, and you actually have an option to max it out. So we're taking, if we look at the base value, let's just go base value first. So for the base value of this gear, we have each time bleed is inflicted, which is going to be often with this character, recovers SP of all vampire allies by 30 and all human allies by 30. And it has a 5-second cooldown, so you're going to be able to do this quite a bit. I'd say, like, obviously you can't get to the full 60, so if we just take 55, that's going to be like 12, or like pretty much like 11 times. You can do this, I believe, if my math is correct. But yeah, you're going to be able to essentially like recover SP. I wish it was by a little bit more, but when we max it out, it's 50 instead. So that's definitely an increase there by 20 of the SP. I'd say that's a pretty good gear, especially if you're able to pull off more of the hidden techniques. Then it's definitely worth it. And it's both for vampire and human allies. So you gotta gear your team to either vampire allies, and what I mean by vampire allies is pretty much just Elizabeth. I don't think we have another vampire that's there. And I don't think you're going to be bringing Vampire Progenitor onto your teams. Especially if this is a green, and we're probably going to probably going for full green teams. So, mainly human allies, if you got that. So, Sid for your tank, and then Alexia, and then some other ones we could look at. Not Alpha. You couldn't take her. Yeah. Let's just go into her skills, though. So let's just go right into her hidden technique and just check it out from there. So we got Blood Replica, and what this one does is that it does 2,000 damage on all enemies. That is good, I'd say, especially for waves. If you're definitely going for the wave game, that is so good. I think that's the most amount of damage I've seen that goes on all enemies, for sure. Because usually you have that kind of amount of damage on a single enemy. And then for, like, of course, Master Shadow, you got, like 2 times the amount of that damage on a single. But he does, like, 1,000 on all enemies. So this one actually does 2,000 damage on all enemies. Not bad. Pretty good damage for an SF, I'd say. And then it's, well, especially when you have all allies, or all enemies. Further inflicts 50% damage multiplied by all enemies' total bleed effect. Now, especially when you have more enemies and you have a bunch of units that can cause bleed, you're going to probably be seeing that even more. So you're multiplying your 2,000% damage on all these enemies with the bleed effects. So you got 50% damage multiplied by all enemies with total bleed effects, and 50% damage multiplied by all allies' total bleed effects. Cancels all allies' bleed effects afterwards. So I could see that being really good, especially if you're being pitted up against, like. But the thing is, this is a hidden technique, so a lot of the times hidden techniques are not going to be activated in PvP. But if it's very situational for the second part of this one. I mean, you're gonna probably see a lot of value with the 2,000% damage on the enemy, as well as the damage multiplied by 50% of the total bleed effects on the enemy itself. But you probably won't see, like, you won't get this multiplier from the bleed effects on yourself unless you have something like SF Claire. I think she can cause bleed on herself as well. So, I mean, SF Claire could do that, so, I mean, that wouldn't be that bad, but unless you got a specific boss or enemy that's giving you bleed, and I can't really name a whole lot for bleed specifically, so most of the times, I don't think you're going to see this multiplier, but, yeah, so this one's not bad. It's technically a 3-in-1, or maybe a 2-in-1 if you want to just count both these as one. It's nice, though, with the bleed effects. Even if you don't get the second part of it, it's still I would say pretty nice, but I mean it could be better. But you can't complain too much on the damage there. When it's awakened, we actually see this value increase by 100% damage multiplied by all enemies' total bleed effects. Like, I can see, like, you'd have to build your team around, like, bleed, and then, of course, vampire and human units, which is going to probably be a little bit harder. Especially if you want to get it to all one element. So, that's Blood Replica. Let's go to the next skill here, which would be Blood Flower. Raises the attack of all allies by 15% for 15 seconds. Not bad, especially if you're raising all allies. Always like to note that. Cancels all debuff effects on all vampire allies. So, basically yourself. That's it. And then all debuffs on effects of all human allies, which is good. Definitely good. This is an attacking unit that can cleanse pretty well. So, with the debuffs, really good there. Especially with that debuff cleanse. And then let's take a look at the Awakened. We're actually boosting to 10% more. Probably don't want to see this on the roadmap too much. I mean, it is a 10% increase going to 25, but, I mean, we probably would see better. Well, let's just go into our next skill here. we have Blood Needle. So this is a 3-hit damage combo, and on a single enemy, and it further inflicts 5 times bleed, so there's 5 more bleed stacks. You get 150, 150, 150, you know, which is making 450%. Otherwise, if you just do that total, it's going to be 600% on the 3-hit damage. Not bad, especially if it's awakened, but 450. I mean, I'd say it's more towards standard, but it's mainly for that bleed, that 2 in 1. And the bleed lasts 20 seconds, so there is that. So you're going to probably want to time this hidden technique with as much bleed as you can, or try to. Alright, so let's go to her next move here. Not that one. Scarlet Blood Queen. Now, right off the bat, you are at the start of the wave, you raise own attack by 20% multiplied by the number of vampires in the party. Oof, this one stings a lot. It does sting pretty hard because you're not going to have a lot of vampires, besides if you have the other Elizabeth, but now there's going to be further increases attack by 20% multiplied by the number of humans in the party, and I'm sure it's by your own because this one starts with own, so it's going to be own. So, I mean, regardless, I mean, you're going to have at least that 1 stack for yourself, but then you can get, so technically you can get up to, if you orchestrate your whole team, five of the people, you can get 100% attack boost. Now this is actually really good if you can get a 100% attack boost, but I guess the bigger problem of it is that you have to heavily gear your team to be human and vampire, like, well, not so much vampire because we're not going to see that unless we get another vampire unit that's really good. But like gearing your team for humans on green is going to be, I'd say, a little bit more of a challenge to do, especially when we have the other like Shadow Festival units that are do not fall into the human category. But let's just take a look at what this looks like awakened. So we get a 30% boost, which is, you know, a bit better. Obviously 10% more. You're going to get 150% attack if you have a full team of vampire and or like humans. So you can combine that with also the raising of attack. So that's another 15 if you awaken it, another 25. So 175% attack you can technically have for this vampire, or not vampire progenitor, for the Scarlet Blood Queen Elizabeth. So, I mean, if you're able to hit that and the Blood Flower with 25%, that's 175% attack. And then you hit this Blood Replica, 2,000% damage. And then also, it's your damage is also being multiplied by all enemies' total bleed effects. So it's 50% damage multiplied by all bleed effects. So that's, you know, it just solely depends. You would need, like, so if you were to do, because it's 2 stacks of bleed for 100%. So let's say, yeah, it's too much math for my head. But essentially, you're going to need a lot of bleed effects. So I think it would be, yeah, 10. So if you have 10 bleed stacks, that'd be 1,000% damage. Yep, you need 10 bleed effects for 1,000% damage. So if they're at 30, you can get 3,000% damage. Now, if you just look at the damage, like, that the bleed can offer, like, this easily becomes like something really, really good. But, you know, the team just requires a lot of restrictions. So, before I get into the should you pull Scarlet Blood Queen, I will be going into the other stuff first before I even do that. So let's go here, and I'm going to actually go into the art first and give my opinion and my 2 cents on that. So here's what the art looks like. This is the full art. It looks not bad. I wish we got to see more of the background because all we get is a blood red moon and then some like crushed pillars and then this little little rock formation here and a little bit of more crushed pillars. I'd like to see more of the background on this one. It is pretty good with the lighting and like just a lot of the red elements in there, like the blood's like kind of swirling around, almost like doing like a little or it's all gathering towards Elizabeth, which is pretty cool. And then of course you got her costume there. I personally don't like the costume too much, But I would give that one a 6 or maybe 7 out of 10 for the art. Let's go ahead and go into her Awakening roadmap and see how good that is as well. But before we go into there, let's go into the skill, because normally I don't touch upon this. For strike combos, you're going to want to look at strike combos for every Shadow Festival unit. So for this one, it is Magic Blockage, and what I said about that is, if you have Magic Blockage on an enemy, if the enemy tries to heal itself, or if that specific unit is getting healed, it's going to take damage instead for 10 seconds. So I feel like this is something that you don't see a lot, especially, but I mean, I guess if it happens in PvP and she happens to be there for the strike combo, I mean, I guess it's good, especially if they have like a really strong healer. I would like to see a different strike combo, so I would say it's not my favorite one to see for the strike combo there. And then I think it's very important to note that the normal attack is a 3-hit, because every hit further inflicts bleed for 60 seconds. So you got the whole wave, so you're continuously stacking up that bleed on that target when they use their normal attack. So it's actually a 3-hit, so you're thinking 3 stacks of bleed for every time this normal attack is launched. So, yeah, I'll definitely be going into normal attacks and the strike combos more often now. And of course, we already seen that linked gear. Just to go over it again, this is about SP, so we can get up to 50% SP of all allies each time bleed is inflicted. So you're recovering all human and vampire allies by 50. And there's a cooldown of 5, so you can do that quite a bit. Okay, now let's go to the Awakening roadmap. So right off the bat, we have the 10% increase, which can get you, instead of 100% attack at the start of the wave, if you have a full party of vampires and or humans, you can get 150%, which is actually probably pretty good for the A1 if you're going to be thinking about this character. And then for the A2, it's the Blood Flower, so that raises the attack even more. So instead of, especially if you were already at A1, you can go to A2, and then you would have that 175% that I was talking about. So when you have the start of the wave, 150% attack, and then you go to 175 with this. This is right after Blood Flower goes off, and you have that. That would be your prime time to hit that ultimate technique. Even if the bleed effects are not super good on that, that's probably when I do it, to be honest, because that's where you're going to get the most value out of that, and it's going to be probably a massive heap of damage. Blood Needle is like, it's not too good. It mainly goes from like 450 to 600, so not too big of a leap there. We get the Magic Gear slot at A4, would have been better at A3, and then the Blood Replica, which is pretty good because considering it goes from 50% damage multiplied by bleed to 100, so instead of getting 10 stacks of bleed for 1,000 damage, you only need 5 stacks of bleed for 1,000 damage, which is really good. But of course you have to grind that out to A5 there. And now we get to the question. Should I pull for Scarlet Blood Queen? Now here's what I'm going to tell you. Personally, for me, I'm going to go ahead and say no. Pass on this banner. Now, some of you might think, oh, well, that's crazy. I mean, she could do so much. I mean, granted, she has a lot of potential. I'm not going to say that she doesn't have a lot of potential. She does, but I think there just needs to be better Shadow Festival human units for the green team, especially since they pitted her on green. There needs to be more, or just better units for green, and better units that can do bleed, because right now, all I can think about for pairings, if we were to go, let's just go ahead and take a look at the regular character pool, if you're just going to base it off that, right? So for a human team, you can use Sherry, since she is human, and she's actually really good with her SS++ gear. And then you could use Sid for a tank right off the bat. So that's 2 human units you can use, and they're pretty good for what they can do. and I currently use them on my green team now because I don't have any better units than that. You can use Alexia, which is pretty good for damage, and she's human. You cannot use the Shadow in the Sun Alpha, even though it would be nice because she contributes to the green team for a good amount there as well. And if you're looking, and then this is of course the pairing you'd have to have. It'd be like bread and butter. You'd have to have Aurora because obviously we have the human grouping for Aurora here, and the fact that she can do bleed as well. So she has a couple bleed moves that would very well complement this Elizabeth. So you'd want that. And then I think the only other, like, here's the other Elizabeth, but it is a red healer. Granted, I'm pretty sure it can do, I think it can do some, now event characters and all that other stuff is like a different story, but I mean, if you do choose this unit, it is very, very limited, especially if you want to get to the full potential for this unit. And if you do pick this as an SF unit, you are kind of locked down to just creating a human/vampire party only, because the more you take away from that dynamic, the weaker this unit gets. And that's why I don't like a lot of units that heavily rely on like creating a specific team, like a human team or vampire team or the anthrope team. You know, you'd have to really be only using those types of units, and they have to really hold the test of time, especially with new units coming up. That means, like, if you were to get this unit, you shouldn't go. Theoretically, you shouldn't have Delta in your team, and you shouldn't have Zeta in your team at all, because it's going to take away from Elizabeth. Or, I mean, you could have all three of these in the same team, but just expect this one to be a hell of a lot weaker than what it could go to. So that's what I think about, like, should I pull for Elizabeth? I think it's definitely a skippable banner for sure. Now, if you are thinking about, like, you know, obviously there's a lot of Shadow Festival banners, and if you don't have Zeta yet, I would go ahead and pull for her. You can check out my video on that as well, or maybe Takane you want to take a look at. There's a lot of banners out that actually, like, that are really good for green teams right now, so if your green teams are kind of lacking, this is the prime time to get yourself a good green unit. Now, I've seen a few comments saying, like, okay, which one should I go for? Should I go for Delta? Should I go for Zeta? And now probably they're like, or should I go for Elizabeth? Now, what I'm going to say is, I've mentioned it before, that Zeta is better than Delta, mainly due to the crit factor. She can get to 100% crits for the whole team at A1, you know, after, like, I forget how many seconds, but you can get there. So if we just go ahead and go to her Awakening at the max, we go to, I mean, you're going to, every 10 seconds, you're going to get 10 and then 10 more, so 20% every 10 seconds. So the last 10 seconds of the wave, you're going to be at 100% crit rate, where you can use all those hidden techniques, and it's going to crit. So it's going to do a lot of damage. That's what makes Zeta so good. Granted, Delta's not a bad pick. She is still pretty good on her own, because she does a lot of damage. The only thing about Delta that makes her slightly weaker than Zeta is the fact that she has no team dynamic whatsoever, and she mainly just buffs herself. Now, if you have other green units buffing Delta, wow, I mean, that's going to be insane. An insane amount of damage. So she's not a bad pick either. Both are really good. But just, you know, Delta's going to be a standalone. And she's not going to be helping the team. She's going to be helping herself. So the team needs to help her instead of her, like this unit helping the team. So that's what I have to say on all the Shadow Festival banners that are currently going and the limited time event units. You can check out all those videos to get more details on it. But to reiterate, this is the type of banner that I would definitely skip on, especially with how restrictive it can get. Locking you to just like vampire or human units. I mean, even if you know, that's just kind of how it is. I think that's everything there is to know. Vigo, signing off.